Following World War II, dedicated to the 11 men who were named beneath it on a flag who gave their lives during that war. The lists on the side wall indicate those who went in service from this particular parish. The Eagle lectern, you can't see it now that it stands down below, but at the base it is engraved with a memorial to William Biddle, who spent 40 years as warden in this church. In the Episcopal Church, a warden is a member of the governing board. The pulpit here was designed and constructed by Lawrence Sawicki with an assist from Russell Mintz. It's dedicated to Mildred Sawicki's mother, Lois Sumner Caldwell. The chairs in this chapel are also very interesting, I feel. There is one at the back, right under that window, that looks very much like a camp chair. It looks as though you could fold it off, but you really can't. It's solid oak. It came from St. John Church. It used to have a note underneath. The note said, "Return to St. John by Sunday," but they didn't say what Sunday, and never got back. I trust it was given to us legitimately at the deconsecration of the church. I have reason to believe that that chair may have been made by a rector of St. John who was born in Wales. At one time in his life, he served as a chaplain to a penitentiary, and he learned to carve wood, and like James Biddle, he enjoyed it, and very likely made that particular chair. That's referred to as a bishop's chair, as are these up here. These chairs are a bit unique because the seat raises. There is a shallow space in there for notes, a hymnal, whatever. If you look here, there really is not much room for anyone to put an extra book or a set of notes, whatever it might be. So that was an ideal arrangement. You could tuck them in under your seat. You're sitting in the pews that are fairly original, and you know that they're just awfully close together. Yes, we do use this chapel. I'm often asked that. We use it for summer services. It's used for weddings, for the Women's Association communion, and other events. I have often seen men come in, usually those 6-footers, and go right to the end and sit diagonally so their legs will fit. And if they miss on that, then they sit at this end so their legs can hang out in the aisleway. I'm also often asked what this grate is in the floor. Well, the grate is part of the heating and cooling system. It's not the original grate. The original grate, I understand, was removed because it tended to grab ladies' heels. The original grate, I'm also told, has been taken over to West Croft, and it has become a coffee table. We just do not waste. In the very early times, there would have been a pot-bellied stove in here. It couldn't have been easy to heat a building that was not in use from Monday to Sunday. And individuals in the membership would bring wood to stoke that little stove. But in winter months, this church was closed entirely. There were no winter services from whenever it got unbearably cold until Easter Sunday, and then they would reopen it. I have a little story to tell you about an incident of World War II. We do have a bell tower. The bell was put in there, incidentally, in 1886. During the war, some of you may be aware that there were many English cadets trained on our Navy base, trained as flyers. One of them didn't get the range quite right in coming back to the base, and he sheared off the tower. I'm told this was in the winter. Reverend McElroy was the rector at the time, and apparently he rushed out to see what this horrendous noise had been. There were engine parts, plane parts all over the front lawn, and eventually they discovered there was a pilot up in the tree. The pilot had to be traumatized. I certainly would have been if that had been the end result. They couldn't get him down. And in time, they called the commander at the base, who sent over a sailor who was of Hawaiian background and used to climbing trees. And apparently he went right up that tree and he got this poor fellow all untangled and brought him down. And even those of us who lived through World War II forget that materials were not that readily available to civilians. And so that bell tower was not repaired until after the war, when the lumber and necessary equipment was again made available to us. It was at that time, or about that time, that a restoration was done on the chapel. That's when these windows were installed. The chancel was rebuilt at that time, or at least shored up, let's say. The supports across here, and I'm often asked about that, were installed at that time because the walls were sort of going their own way and they needed a little help. That story that I tell you of the bell tower catastrophe brings us to what you would not really call a religious relic, but it is a relic of that event. Ken Gate very nicely encased the ripcord from the parachute of the gentleman who got caught in the tree. In reference to our windows, they are identified in a book called American Churches. There's a copy available in the front office. We're in there on 2 different pages. We don't even know when the photographer took pictures of this church or just when this was all done, but suddenly we appeared in the book. I have another little story I like to tell you. Kitty Campbell, who was a member of this church, did the needlework on the kneelers. Kitty's mother, she tells us, always told stories to the children in the family that had a monkey in them. And so she put the monkey very prominently on top of Noah's Ark, and she did this one. When she did this kneeler, I really feel she got carried away. Now, it's Jonah and the whale. Jonah has on swimwear that you might find in the 17th and 18th century. That's bad enough. But in the background, the ship is flying the flag or the burgee of the Grosse Ile Yacht Club. Her father had been a Commodore there. Speaking of sailors and ships and things of the sort, when you live on this island, you know a number of recreational sailors. Very often they refer to a boat as a hole in the water into which you keep pouring money for maintenance and operation, etc. Old chapels are much the same. If you gave a donation today, or if you're thinking about it, all of St. James thanks you, because it's those donations, the chapel fund, that keeps this legacy alive for future generations. Our benefactor, whom I've told you has come from very humble beginnings, never lost faith. She was true to her Lord to the end, and I hope that you will have some of the feeling of that spirit when you leave here. I do want to tell you also that I have had a number of privileges in doing this tour over a period of a few years. One of them was on an occasion when the great-granddaughter of Gordon Lloyd came down to look at this chapel. I happened to have been here. I feel I was sent here because I was arguing with myself whether I should come and check some facts. She came in and she told me that there was another chapel that would be very identifiable, much like this one at Saugatuck, Michigan. I have since seen it, and she's absolutely right. And through our conversation and a telephone call that was made, she found out that she had a cousin down here, a second cousin that she knew nothing about. That second cousin is Lloyd Taylor. We know him as the designer of tailor-made doors, and the Lloyd in his name is the family name. I also happened to be here when the Tiffany window was being repaired. The altar had been pulled forward and the rear doors had been pulled out, rear doors being the altar screen. There are all these little grooves in the plaster behind there. I mentioned before that I had reason to believe there might have been a reed organ in here. I'm still working on that one. I don't know for sure, but there had to have been a reason for these very small grooves in the plaster. There was a window there, but prior to the installation of this one, it was a clear window, not stained glass. I also had passed along to me during the time the organ was being installed some newspapers that were found. When you remove the carpet that used to be here, you discover you have to make some repairs on the floor. And in making those repairs, they found these newspapers all fan-folded, sort of like little tiny pleats. That newspaper was dated 1888. It was found in 1988. It's an old Detroit Free Press. It now hangs in a frame in the vestibule on the way to the fireplace room. It has been a real privilege to share our history, our time, our story with all of you, and we thank you for being here.